In this video, we're going to be looking at bullish and bearish pennants, and some of the objectives discussed in this video include recognizing pennants in real time, identifying the completion of pennants, and we'll also look at two ways of deriving price targets from pennants that involves one-to-one projections and also a measured move based off the size of flagpoles, which we'll dive into later in this video. But for now, these are the objectives, and we shall begin with a bullish pennant. Pennant patterns are very similar to the flag patterns. A bullish pennant is, as we have on screen here, a bullish continuation pattern, and they start with a rapid rise in price followed by a symmetrical triangle, which is a triangle between two converging trend lines where the lower trend line is ascending and the upper one is descending. And if both trend lines are converging but both are ascending or both descending, it's a wedge, not a symmetrical triangle, and hence it is not a pennant. If you don't have that symmetrical triangle, it's not a pennant. Remember that. And price in this circumstance is expected to break out to the upside and continue rising. It's also important to know that the pattern is only confirmed as soon as the two trend lines which contain the triangle have been drawn. So we'll go an example here. Let's see. We'll use the word LAUD. We've got lower trend lines ascending. We've got the upper trend line descending. I'd say think loud to remember this. Remember that it must be a symmetrical triangle to be confirmed as a pennant. You have this flagpole area here. You have some choppy price action where you've got not a wedge but a symmetrical triangle, and then you have the break. In this case, it is bullish, so you'd look to go long on the break situation. And with regards to volume, you would see volume declining throughout the triangle portion of the pattern. You see the triangle portion here? That's where volume would decline, and then it would expand on the breakout and the subsequent continuation. So here's an example here of a bullish pennant. We have shares of Morgan Stanley with the chart plotted with weekly candles. Each candle represents 1 week. And a minimum one-to-one projection target can be obtained by measuring the vertical height of the base here, and you would also look to the bottom area of this base, which we can see here. The vertical distance between the trend lines is at the start of the triangle, as we have shown, and you must use the start of the trend line because the distance between the trend lines decreases as it unfolds, and that measured distance is then projected upwards from the point of breakout to get the price target. So we have this difference here. Take this top away from the bottom. That is your difference, and you add that on top of the breakout point, which is where we've got that symmetrical triangle. Price breaks above. This is the bullish pennant that had been formed ever since the trend lines were put in place. You can see that's when it's formed. The breakout then occurs, and you would likely target resistance at that one-to-one projection point. And it's interesting to see how that played out as well. Here's another example of a bullish pennant. You can also derive price targets from the height of the flagpole portion of the formation. So you would simply measure the vertical distance between the start and the end of the flagpole, and you would project it upwards from the point of breakout of the triangle. So this is the start of the flagpole area, the bottom of where it forms, and this is the top area. And you would get that measured move. You would project it on top of wherever the break occurs. You can see the break occurs here. We project that one-to-one target of that distance, and it's interesting to see that the target was met in this example and acted as an area of resistance here. These are Apple shares with a 2-hourly candlestick, just for reference. Each bar represents 2 hours worth of trading activity. So note also that the contracting volume was occurring as the triangle developed. You have that symmetrical triangle, you have contracting volume, and volume expands on the breakout. Breakout occurs here around the 13th of August, and you can see volume also expands accordingly. So bearish pennants are, of course, the opposite, in which they occur in bear markets. They are essentially bearish continuation patterns. They start with a rapid decline, then form a symmetrical triangle. Price under this circumstance would be expected to break out to the downside and continue downwards. You have your flagpole formation here, and then you have the symmetrical triangle, you have price breaking out to the downside. And again, with respect to volume, you should expect to see volume drying up as the triangle unfolds. So during this triangle bit of activity, volume probably dries up. And when it breaks towards the downside, that's when you'd expect the volume to expand on that breakout. That's where the volume expands. And remember that the pattern is confirmed as soon as the two trend lines are established. Don't forget that. So here's a bearish flag. We've got a price target derived from the base of the triangle, which was met shortly after the breakout. This is the base area. We have that projection made from the point of breakout. You can see that's to the downside. You would project it from there, a 1-to-1 target. And again, we see volume declining to low levels as the triangle develops. Triangle's developing here, and you can see volume is declining. And as the breakout occurs towards the downside on this bearish pennant, you can see volume expands. And we can use the flagpole to get an even lower target if we're looking for a larger move to the downside. And you can also see that that target was met later on. So let's just go through this again. This is the flagpole measure. That vertical distance is kept as your measured move, and you simply project that onto the point of breakout, and this gives you the flagpole measurement. Before we looked at the triangle base, the distance between the base in terms of vertical height, and you would project it from the breakout point. That gave you this first horizontal green line we have here of support. When the price was a little bit higher, you can see there was a bit of support there. Price bounced and then gapped below that level, which is around here. This is the gap area. It gapped below and found support at the 1-to-1 target projection point based on the flagpole measure. So to conclude, pennants are another common pattern which is very important to know about, especially useful for breakout traders. But remember that the pattern is complete as soon as you can draw both the trend lines. So as soon as that happens, you can start preparing targets. It's also really important to remember that you must use the base of the triangle to calculate those price targets. Remember, based on the triangle base, you must use the base. This is not the flagpole measure, but the first one we mentioned. You must use the base of the triangle to calculate price targets when using that method. And other than that, you can't really go wrong.